The sun rose over the golden sands of Egypt, casting long shadows across the sprawling city of Memphis, where the pharaoh's palace gleamed like a jewel against the desert. Inside the palace, Pharaoh awoke wrapped in fine linen and adorned with golden jewelry, ready to greet another day as both king and god on earth, responsible for the well-being of the land and the people who tilled the Nile's fertile soil. Courtiers bowed deeply as the pharaoh passed through marble halls decorated with colorful murals depicting battles, harvests, and the gods who guided the kingdom. Servants carried trays of bread, honey, and dates, while musicians softly played harps and flutes to welcome the ruler's morning. The air smelled of incense and warm Nile mud, blending with the perfume of lotus flowers that lined the palace courtyard. Outside, the streets of Memphis bustled with merchants, artisans, farmers, and children, all moving with a rhythm that had been perfected for generations. Potters shaped clay into jars and figurines, weavers created linen so fine it seemed almost weightless, and carpenters carved chairs, chests, and statues that gleamed under the sun. Fishermen hauled nets from the Nile, their catch glistening in the morning light, while farmers guided oxen through rich, dark soil, planting barley, wheat, and flax for the coming harvest. Pharaoh's advisors brought news of distant villages, trade routes, and the progress of the great projects that defined the kingdom. Among these, the construction of the pyramids was the most magnificent and mysterious, promising to honor the pharaoh in the afterlife and secure the favor of the gods. Workers, architects, and engineers had spent years planning the massive stones, calculating angles, and designing ramps that would allow thousands of laborers to move stones heavier than any one man could lift alone. At the quarry, limestone blocks were cut from the hills with copper chisels and wooden mallets. Teams of workers rolled massive stones on logs, carefully guiding them toward the Nile, where boats would carry them downstream to the construction site. Skilled artisans carved hieroglyphs into some blocks before they were even placed, ensuring that every symbol would tell the story of Pharaoh's power and piety for eternity. Meanwhile, at the pyramid site, laborers coordinated with precision, moving enormous blocks up ramps with ropes, levers, and sheer determination. Each stone had to be perfectly aligned, not only to maintain stability, but also to reflect the cosmic order that Egyptians believed was central to their world. Overseeing everything, foremen shouted instructions, while scribes recorded daily progress, counting each stone and noting which teams had worked on which section. The pharaoh himself occasionally visited the construction, wearing ceremonial robes and a headdress shaped like a falcon. His presence inspired workers to push harder, knowing they were serving both a king and a living god whose tomb would guide the journey to the afterlife. Priests accompanied the pharaoh, offering prayers, pouring libations of water, and chanting hymns to the sun god Ra, whose golden light seemed to embrace the rising pyramid. Life around the pyramid site was a mixture of discipline and celebration. Workers sang songs to keep in rhythm as they hauled stones, while children played nearby, mimicking the labor with small bricks and sticks, dreaming of the monumental structures they might one day help build. Families brought food and water to support the teams, sharing bread, fish, and dates, understanding that their labor was a sacred duty connected to Pharaoh's eternal legacy. Inside temples near the pyramids, priests performed daily rituals, offering incense, oil, and bread to statues of gods like Osiris, Anubis, and Horus. Each offering was carefully arranged, each chant recited precisely, ensuring that the divine powers remained favorable and that Pharaoh's journey after death would be safe and prosperous. People believed that the energy of these rituals flowed into the pyramids, binding the stones with spiritual significance as much as physical strength. Scribes recorded every detail of life, grain deliveries, tax collections, and the schedules of workers at the pyramids. They kept accounts not only to maintain order, but also to ensure that future generations would know the wisdom and achievements of their pharaohs. Education was valued, and young scribes trained in temple schools learned the art of hieroglyphics, copying texts that included myths, prayers, and instructions for building sacred monuments. Even during harvest season, the work at the pyramids continued. Farmers balanced their responsibilities in the fields with occasional shifts helping move stones, demonstrating a society where cooperation and devotion to Pharaoh united all people. Children helped gather reeds for matting, while women carried water, and elder craftsmen trained apprentices in the techniques that had been refined over centuries. Feasts and celebrations punctuated the intense labor. Workers sang, danced, and played instruments during breaks, honoring gods and seeking blessings for safety and success. These festivities reminded everyone that life was not only toil, but also joy, culture, and community entwined with the sacred purpose of the pyramids. The design of each pyramid reflected careful thought. The base was perfectly level, the angles precise, and the interior chambers arranged to house Pharaoh's treasures and guide his spirit to the stars. Astronomers consulted charts to align passages with constellations, connecting the structure to the eternal heavens and ensuring harmony with cosmic forces. Artisans painted walls with vivid depictions of Pharaoh's life, conquests, and divine interactions. Sculptors carved statues of gods and pharaohs, some almost lifelike, meant to serve as eternal guardians for the tombs. Every stone, painting, and inscription was a statement of power, faith, and human ingenuity. Visitors to the pyramid site marveled at the scale and precision. Travelers from distant lands brought gifts, offering bronze tools, precious stones, or exotic animals to honor Pharaoh and the gods. They watched as teams of workers lifted enormous blocks with pulleys and ropes, astonished at the skill, coordination, and sheer determination required. Through all this, Pharaoh's vision united the kingdom. He was both ruler and spiritual leader, guiding the people in life and preparing for his eternal journey. The pyramids were not only tombs, but symbols of civilization itself, a testament to human creativity, devotion, and the desire to reach beyond the ordinary. As the sun set over the desert, the golden glow illuminated the massive stones, the temple courtyards, and the bustling villages along the Nile. The pharaoh retired to his palace, where musicians played gentle melodies and servants brought fragrant oils and fresh water. Outside, workers rested, children played, and priests kept vigil, knowing that the work of the day had been sacred, meaningful, and eternal. From the smallest clay tablet to the largest stone block, every piece of Egypt told a story. It was a story of power, devotion, skill, and the human desire to leave a mark on the world that would last forever. And at the heart of it all stood pharaohs and pyramids, symbols of a civilization that continues to captivate our imagination thousands of years later. Night settled over the Egyptian desert with a quiet majesty covering the unfinished pyramid in soft starlight while workers rested in their homes, unaware that their efforts would one day be admired by people thousands of years in the future. The desert air cooled, carrying gentle breezes across the Nile, while the silhouette of the pyramid rose like a mountain crafted by human hands. Inside the royal palace, Pharaoh sat with priests, listening to prayers and sacred music dedicated to the gods who protected Egypt. Oil lamps flickered, casting golden light over walls painted with symbols of eternity, power, and divine order. Priests traced patterns of incense smoke, reading omens and interpreting messages they believed came from the heavens. Deep in temple halls, scribes worked late into the night, pressing fresh symbols onto papyrus scrolls and clay tablets. They recorded everything from temple donations to the number of workers who had carried stone blocks during the day. Their quiet writing became the heartbeat of the kingdom, preserving knowledge the way the pyramids preserved Pharaoh's legacy. At dawn the next day, the entire city of Memphis awakened to another cycle of activity. Markets opened, and merchants shouted their prices for spices, pottery, sandals, and carved figurines of protective gods. Children chased each other through dusty streets, imitating the movements of workers pulling ropes like miniature pyramid builders. Near the river bank, boats glided across the Nile, carrying limestone blocks and workers singing rhythmic chants. The captains steered carefully, guiding the heavy stones toward ramps where teams of laborers waited with ropes and sledges. The workers' feet kicked up small clouds of dust, and each step brought the pyramid a little closer to completion. Foremen shouted instructions, and groups of workers coordinated their movements with surprising precision. As the massive stone blocks reached the base of the pyramid, they were greeted with cheers, as if each block were a treasure carried from the gods themselves. Teams used wooden sledges, dampening the sand with water to reduce friction and move the impossible weight with human strength and determination. Skilled engineers stood atop the ramps, pointing and measuring angles with simple yet ingenious tools made from wood and string. They checked every alignment, ensuring that the corners met with perfect symmetry, forming a shape that reflected cosmic harmony. The precision was astonishing, with each block fitting like a puzzle piece into the grand structure rising toward the sun. Inside temporary workshops, artisans shaped statues of Pharaoh, carved hieroglyphic texts, and polished stone vessels meant to accompany the ruler to the afterlife. Painters mixed pigments from crushed minerals turquoise, ochre, black soot, and red iron and decorated walls with scenes of life, battle, worship, and celebration. Young apprentices watched and learned, dreaming of becoming master craftsmen who would leave their mark on history. While construction continued, priests performed rituals that were believed to protect the workers and bless the structure. They broke clay pots, poured milk and honey onto the ground, and offered bread to the gods who watched from the sky. Their chants echoed across the desert, mingling with the sounds of labor and creating an atmosphere of sacred purpose. Pharaoh visited again, carried in a royal litter with golden handles and silk canopies fluttering in the breeze. As he stepped down, the workers knelt, believing that the presence of their ruler brought divine energy to their work. Pharaoh spoke to the engineers, questioned the scribes, and placed a ceremonial stone with his own hands, marking the pyramid as truly his. In the nearby villages, life continued with its own rhythm. Farmers harvested wheat that shimmered like gold beneath the sun, turning fields into waves of grain. Women prepared meals over clay ovens, grinding flour and mixing dough, while children fetched water from the river. At night, families gathered under reed roofs, sharing stories of gods, spirits, and ancient heroes whose deeds shaped the world. Grandparents told tales of how the first kings commanded the gods' favor and how pyramids served as stairways for pharaohs to join the stars. The children listened with wide eyes, imagining the day when they too might help build something that touched the heavens. Back at the construction site, the inner chambers of the pyramid took form. Narrow passageways were carved with precision, leading to hidden rooms reserved for treasures, sacred texts, and protective amulets. The workers handled each stone with care, knowing that one misaligned block could disrupt the entire flow of energy believed to guide Pharaoh's spirit. Craftsmen decorated sarcophagi with gold leaf and carvings that depicted the journey through the afterlife. They crafted miniature boats, statues of gods, jewelry, and ceremonial objects intended to serve Pharaoh beyond death. These objects were not merely treasures, they were spiritual tools meant to help the ruler navigate the unknown world beyond. As the pyramid grew taller, its perfect shape became visible from miles away. Travelers approached, marveling at the engineering skill and unity required to create such an immense monument. Some brought gifts salt from the desert, incense from distant lands, or small animals to sacrifice in the temples. When the pyramid finally neared completion, the workers celebrated with music, feasts, and dancing. Musicians played harps, drums, and flutes, while dancers moved with graceful steps inspired by the gods. Tables overflowed with dates, roasted meat, bread, olives, and figs, all shared in gratitude for the project's progress. Priests blessed the final capstone, a shining block that reflected the sun's rays like a beacon. With great ceremony, the capstone was lifted into place, marking the pyramid as ready to receive its eternal occupant. People cheered, cried, and embraced, knowing they had created something that would outlast their lifetimes. As the sun set behind the pyramid, its shadows stretched across the desert like an arm reaching toward eternity. The pharaoh stood at the base, gazing at the structure that would house his spirit and ensure his journey into the afterlife. He felt pride, reverence, and peace, confident that the gods would welcome him and that his people would remember him for ages. The workers returned home, tired but fulfilled, knowing they had helped build a monument that symbolized the heart of their civilization. Children played with tiny clay pyramids, dreaming of futures where they would become scribes, builders, priests, or even advisors to future kings. The desert night fell again, wrapping the Great Pyramid in silence, leaving it to await the day when Pharaoh would be laid to rest within its sacred walls. Through the ages, the pyramids would stand as guardians of time, whispering stories of power, devotion, and human brilliance. They would become symbols of a timeless civilization and reminders that human hands, guided by dreams and belief, could shape wonders that reached toward the sky. And even today, the pyramids continue to inspire awe, inviting us to imagine the world where pharaohs ruled and the desert echoed with the footsteps of those who built eternity from stone.